Hello, everybody. This is R.K. Mullins, author of Time for a Serial Killer. Also, the host of Author to Author. It is an internet video podcast that I'm doing to introduce new authors and existing authors that you may or may not have heard of to the reading public out there. A lot of authors, well, there's a lot of people out there that's got some really good books, some dang good writing, and I want to interview as many of them as I possibly can and introduce those to you guys so you all be a little bit more informed about what's out there to read and support these new authors. I have a very, very nice, beautiful young lady, Laura Frost. She is the author of Crimson, another nice little book. I have not had the chance to read it yet, like I told her. But I'm gonna let her talk about it a little bit, and then we get in, the whole thing about these interviews that I'm doing. If we ain't having fun, we ain't smiling, we ain't laughing, we ain't doing it. All right, Laura, take it away. Let's get a little bit of a background on you and your book, Crimson.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to invite me, first of all. I just want to say that. So pleasantries out the way. But yeah, you told me I'm the first British author, is it, that you've interviewed, or?
You are the first British author I have scheduled so far.
I will be very careful with the words I use. Things I know some words don't translate well in American, so I'll try my best. But
well, my southern don't necessarily translate all that good into English either.
But yes, I mean, I had my first published book out in 2016, and that's the Crimson book. And it's a horror book aimed at the young adult market. It does have fantasy elements in it, but it is a horror book because, I fell in love with authors like Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft. Just the feeling, I don't know if you appreciate this as well, but I just love the feeling of dread when reading a book, just that build up. Like, if you haven't been on a roller coaster, it's the bit at the top that's the best, not the full. But I wanted to be able to write that way, and I wanted to get it out to get it out to audiences. So yeah, I mean, I say Crimson's the first book. There is a sequel afterwards, but there's no point talking about the sequel if people don't know about the first book. But I mean, as you say, you haven't read it. Or at least it's not yet, and that's absolutely fine. But to put like a brief synopsis to it, it starts off with a young girl that's getting a horrific nightmare, and the nightmare is it doesn't make sense to her at the beginning, but it makes sense to her as time progresses. Mm-hmm. But the nightmare is of basically a monster. I'll be graphic here, ripping apart children.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes. And I put that in the first chapter so people can either go, yes, this is great, or I've had it before at conventions where people close the book, put it down on a table and walk away very quickly. But that's why it's in the first chapter. So I want to put it there and then. This is what it's going for. If it's uncomfortable to hear about, the gears turning and blood curdling in the background, it's not for you. But yeah, this young girl's getting this reoccurring nightmare, and the whole nightmare is this premonition, this warning that something is after her, and it's simply referred to as Crimson. Basically, the voice keeps yelling, get the hell away from Crimson, just keep walking, keep running, don't let Crimson get you. Right. And so it's that journey, that horror, knowing this thing's coming for her, not quite knowing what it is, just knowing, yeah, it's ripped apart children and it does not care, get away from it. So that's me trying to say it without giving away too much. So
yeah. We don't. One thing, there's 4 things we do not talk about on this show. We do not talk about religion. We do not talk about politics. We do not talk about our publishers, or at least name them. And we don't do spoilers. So
no.
Audience, if you're looking for a spoiler, guess what? Find another channel. But don't find another channel. I want you to keep watching this. We got some authors on there. Come on now. We all out here to have fun. And if I ain't having fun, I ain't doing it, and I know Laura wouldn't do it. Crimson sounds like a very interesting book. Now, I have to ask, it's a horror book. Are you very graphic in your details?
So because I want to try and aim for the young adult market, it's graphic in description, and there are moments where there's definitely detailed injuries, but I
Right.
try not to take it too far because I don't want to, because like I say, my audience is 13 and onwards. So I
Right.
don't want to make it too far. One day I would love to be able to do an adult horror book where I just go full on like saw detail kind of descriptions, but
Read mine yet, have you?
yeah. But I tried. There is definitely details, parts that will come up. Like just thinking off the top of my head, chapter 18. There's a moment which I've had people going, "Okay, I was not expecting that particular thing to happen." Again, try not to spoil things, but that
Right.
gives quite an injury detail, but not going too far. That it. I mean, I say not to put off teenagers. It's more not to put off their parents. Teenagers have seen everything by this point, but the parents are buying them the books. So.
It's like I tell friends of mine that have little children, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
by the time they hit the age of 12, you done taught them all you're going to be able to. They saying words out there with their friends that you ain't never heard. Well, you might have heard of them, but you ain't never spoke them in front of them or very little. You know, peer pressure, school takes over after that age. So we can't control everything our children do, or at least we might want to fool ourselves into thinking we can, but no, we can't. We're out. We're pretty much out of the picture. By the time they're about 16, what once was daddy's, what once was a little girl, daddy be the hero. Now daddy be the zero. You're young enough. You're pretty close to that age. Time for a serial killer. I'm writing a series, a 10 book series. Okay.
Yeah.
And I call it the Nightmare Book Series. Okay. Every one of my books have to tie into each and every, the one before it, the one after it, and they must tie into the very first one. And there's a good reason I have them do that. But I've actually had people pick my book up and start reading it and love it. And then when they get into the murders, they're like, man, I didn't know you're going to be like that.
I mean, it's always great when you can just surprise your readers and they think they know what's going to happen. Just go, no, actually, I've just dropped this bomb here. It's fine. Just
I got a very daunting task ahead of me, and I'm sure you do too. We all kind of set ourselves up, not necessarily for success. Sometimes we set ourselves up for failure, and then we prove to be successful at doing it because of the way we did it, the way we set it up. With me, I've got to have a minimum of 3 major twists through the book, and then an ending that's just unpredictable. And trust me, my endings are very unpredictable. I'm extremely imaginative. Every time I've sent something into my publisher and I ask, well, what do you think about that? She's like, oh man, I don't want to open this. I don't want to read it. She's like, I'm a weenie. Is that kind of a reaction you get out of your publisher?
I mean, I'm my own publisher, so
no, you don't.
However, I do have friends and family read the first manuscript just to give me an idea of how they feel. When I wrote Crimson and I passed it on to my mother actually, who read through it to see, and it's great because she hates horror. She doesn't like squeamish things. So I was like, if I get reactions from her, I know it's working. Right. But I passed it on to her, and then she was going to pass it on to another family member. But before she did, she said, don't read these 2 chapters. Please don't read these 2 chapters. Like she pre-warned her. She said, so I'm going to censor it for you. Don't read these 2, just read the rest. So
I like to mix a lot of different things in my writing. And I'm pretty sure, some writers like to be very, very specific and follow a specific path. Whereas with me, I'll take and mix a little bit of sex in, not necessarily too graphic, because I'm not very comfortable about, I'm not going to write pornography. Sorry, it ain't going to happen, but I will use innuendo to explain what's going on. You're writing for the young adult.
Yes, that has to be avoided. It's just to make sure the parents are still going to buy the book. So,
What is your target audience?
so say my target audience for the current series that I'm doing. You said the one you're working on at the moment is 10 books. Mine will be complete in 5 books. So Crimson is in chronological order. Crimson is in the middle, but I'm planning to do Crimson Beast. The 3rd book is Daybreak, and I'm going to do a Star Wars and do the first 2 later on. I don't know if you like Star Wars or not, but it's,
I'm a sci-fi
but yeah,
fan.
it's but yeah, it's a young adult audience, and to be honest with you, I wanted to avoid any sexual mentions in it because I didn't want to alienate like preteens.
Right.
But I also do my best not to put too much romance in it, simply because when I was growing up and I was looking at young adult horror books, which in the end I gave up and just started reading Stephen King. But when I was beginning, it started off, okay, these 2 18-year-olds, one girl, one bloke, they're on an adventure together and they kiss and they hug and they end up being a couple. And it ended up doing that with every single young adult horror book.
Right.
And I wanted to avoid that. Absolutely have friendships in there, of course, fathers and mothers of children, that happens. But I didn't want romance to overtake the horror. So these series avoid it as much as possible, really, because I don't want it to suddenly center around these 2 are a couple, and I think the young audience say ship these 2 together. They'll use these terms. I'm not the cool kid. I was the kid that stayed in the library reading books. But yeah, I wanted to avoid that on purpose. I mean, when I'm done with this series, I'm planning to do an adult horror book where, yes, that will be in. But these ones, no, I avoid it. One, because I was sick to death of reading it when I was a child, but also, again, because the parents are buying the books for the children, I've got to avoid certain terms. So,
very much understood on that one. And we got to be respectful of our demographic.
Absolutely.
I'm strictly for the adults. I probably could do young, a younger audience, but I choose not to. I don't write fantasy because I tried to write a little bit of fantasy one time and it sounded so much like everything else had been out there. I'm like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. But I am breaking out of my chosen genre that I'm very comfortable in and getting into, I guess you would call it, fact-based fiction.
Yeah.
But it's still fiction, where I do a lot more humor and stuff like that in there. There's some. I'm not into tear jerkers or love stories or romance or any of that. If it's chick lit, I'm out of it. I'm a guy. What do you expect, right?
And it's definitely a lot about the men. Oh, my word's terrible. Sorry. There's already a lot of them out there already. And again, I guess that kind of relates to mine in that I tried to avoid the romance because I was so bored of it when I was reading it as a child. So,
and that's, I hate to say that's the case with a lot of the authors that write young adult, is they put a lot of romance in there. And you apparently you did a lot of reading of, like you said, Stephen King, probably some Tom Clancy a little bit, stuff like that. You follow the horror genre area. What is your take on Stephen King?
So Stephen King is what got me into horror. When I was growing up, the library we had wasn't very big, or when I say it wasn't very big, there was 2 shelves dedicated to young adult. And I think in that there were 3 books that were horror, and there were the Twilight series as well, if that counts. But then I walked away and went to the adult fiction, and I have no idea why I picked up the book. But I literally picked up just the first book that I saw in a horror section. It wasn't even, and I'm going to say this up front, it's not Stephen King's best book, It's not a very well known one. You know, people definitely have heard of Misery, Pet Cemetery, things like that. I picked up The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and that was the first adult horror book that I picked up.
It wasn't one of his best ones, no, I have to agree.
No, it's not. It's, there's definitely better books that he's written. You know, he's one of the favorites, but I'll pick up books and I'll go, well, I didn't have fun with that one.
Right.
But that is what got me into horror, just this build up of this girl getting scared, feeling a dread. And then I picked up, thankfully, the next one I picked up was Misery, and then I worked on other ones. So I did get into the good ones later on. But yeah.
You brought up Star Wars, right? Well, you know, I'm old enough to where I actually seen it in theaters when it came out. You know, you know, but I also saw The Exorcist in the theaters when it first came out. I've been a horror fan from way back. I mean, I look at, I love a lot of the old horror flicks like Nosferatu, any of the Draculas. I mean, Boris Karloff, Vincent Price, all the classics. I love them. I mean, I grew up on them. But I picked up the first book I ever picked up of Stephen King was Carrie. Loved it. One of his best works, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Later on, I picked up another book. I'm not going to mention it again. And I'm not trying to, and people, I'm not slamming Stephen King. It's personal preference, okay? He's a great author. The man is a master. I idolize him. I want to be him when I grow up. Won't happen, but I like it. I picked up another book later on, and I couldn't get past chapter 10. It was so dadburn boring with him describing all these characters that really didn't matter in the long run. And I'm like, why? Just to fill pages? Come on. You know? No.
But it's okay to do that. You don't have to idolize every book that an author puts out, especially how many books has Stephen King put out now? Is it like 70, 80? It's a lot.
I think it's like 60. Still a good.
Yeah. It's but you're not going to like every single one, especially since he's tried to go into different like paths. He's tried different things. He's tried different ideas. And therefore, not everyone's going to like every single book. And that's fine. I'm still going to, you know, I still admire him and they're still definitely the big books. But it's absolutely fine to turn around and say, well, I didn't like that book of his. I don't think he's going to take it to heart. He's still getting his money. He's still getting people reading them. But
I'm a nobody author. One book out, I ain't got. You know, I'm not going to make a dent in his ego. You know. But like I said, he is the master, and I will give it to him. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Now I looked at the website where your you know, the link you sent me where your book's at, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you're self-publisher. You publishing through this particular company, and what is the draw there to self-publishing that?
So for me, it's been of a balancing act, and it's been a learning curve because although I have a degree at university, it's definitely not in English. I'm not.
Really?
It's in programming, the complete opposite of the English language. But you know, it's when I first started doing it, I did do it through one of these publishers. I won't name which one because I strongly believe that every author that tries to go on this needs to find the right one for them. But when I went through, let's call them Publisher X, because X sounds cool. But Publisher X, I did through them, which meant they owned the ISBN. So when you went to buy the book, they came up as the publisher. But to put it politely, we had a disagreement. So I pulled out and I went through what's called a distributor instead, which means they are not the publisher. It means that you have to file for your own ISBN. So when people look up the book, it will come up the author is, so for myself, it comes up the author is Laura Foster and the publisher is Laura Foster. So it means I'm in charge of sending them off to the correct libraries. I'm in charge of where it goes, but the distributor will print my books on demand. And the reason why I personally do that is I simply do not have the space to keep a high amount of stock of books.
Right.
And because I am on this little island called Great Britain, and there are people in the United States, there are people in Australia, New Zealand, you've got lots of countries around the world that speak English. For me to be able to have these books here and go, right, I'm going to post it across the ocean, that would cost too much. So instead, this distributor, they have factories situated in different countries. So if someone wants it, they will print it there and then send it off to them. But it also means then that bookstores outside of Great Britain can also get a copy across to their customer, which is why I always say to people, if they go, where can you buy the book? I always go, you can either do it online through pretty much any of the book selling websites, or if you want to support your local bookstore, they can order it in. They can physically order in a copy and then sell it on to them. So I always want to let people choose what market they want to buy it from. I don't want people to just go, you can only get it from this one website. And again, that works for me. There are authors that I've met at conventions where they don't like that. They prefer it that it's just directly through their website or directly through one website so they can keep a close handle on it. But for me, I just wanted to get as many people reading my books as possible. So that's why I do it through the distributor.
Even though you're going through a distributor, right?
Through
the website you showed me and all that. Even though you're going through them, it's still across all the major platforms, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So
all those guys.
Yes, you could buy directly through the distributor. If you look up my name, you will find my website, and my website will link you directly to the distributor. But again, you don't have to, because it does get sold across different websites. And what they do basically is they put through the request and then they send it out. So again, it's like if a bookshop wanted to order in a book, they're technically contacting the distributor and then they send it out to them. So that's how you can get it on pretty much the major websites, and how you can also get ebooks on Kindle, Kobo, all the major e-readers as well.
All right. Great information, actually. Thank you. I think a lot of authors out there could use that. And if you want to know who her distributor is, or distributor, as we call it in the USA, go to her website. I'm sure that she'll be more than happy. Just Google her name. You can get her website that way. Because I don't have a link in front of me right now to be able to post it. But like I said, if you Google Laura Frost and her book Crimson, you're gonna find it, I guarantee you. Now, Laura, I ask this of every single author I've interviewed, and I ain't gonna let you be one I don't ask.
Okay.
Look at my book.
It lagged just a little bit just then, sorry.
Have you taken a look at my book?
I have not had the chance, I'm afraid. You have definitely pointed it out to me. I haven't had a chance to have a look at it. I'm so sorry. You have told me that it is a 10-book series, but it's unfortunately not had a chance to look at it yet.
I'll shoot you a link. You can take. You don't have to buy it if you don't want to, but if you do want to read it, be my guest. I will encourage you. If you like shocking, graphic details of murders that could possibly give you nightmares, I suggest it.
I always want things that replace the nightmares I normally have. So it's definitely one I'm going to look out.
From what I understand, some of the best horror writers out there are people that can't sleep at night because they have nightmares and they got to put them down on paper. We got to do that. Share it with the world. Not everybody's having a good nightmare like they're supposed to, right?
It's how you know you're alive. That's the thing. It's
like, I look at it this way. I don't want to ride a roller coaster that's going across flat ground.
No.
I want my heart to be pumping. I want the adrenaline to get going. If a book does not grab me from page 1 and hold my attention all the way to the end, I'm probably going to get bored with it and put it down. And if it's a horror book, oh my Lord, if that happens, that's bad. That is terrible. You know, no. All right. But again, people, this is Author to Author. I'm R.K. Mullins, and interviewing beautiful Miss Laura Frost and her book, Crimson. Please look her name up, Google it, get her book. You know, from what she was reading off to us, I think it's a daggone good read. I know I'm going to get that sucker, and I'm going to read it my dang self. Because, I mean, I got to read something, right? And if it ain't a horror book, you ain't getting me to read it. Laura, I do appreciate you being on the show today. I'm going to get this posted up there for everybody to see, and I'll send you the links to the posts. And please post it all over your social media, your website, whatever. Okay?
I will absolutely do that. And thank you so much again for having me here. I mean that.
I appreciate it. And you were a great interview. A lot of fun on this show, and that's what we're here for, right?
Absolutely.
People, join us next week. I don't know exactly who I've got scheduled yet, but I guarantee you they're gonna be good. If they ain't gonna be on. Y'all have a good day now. Bye.